it's going on to your channel as okay, good, interesting.
So at least you aren't cussing and swearing, so that's a good thing.
There you go, right? Yeah.
Don't need
Well, I mean, as I was saying in the in the discussion over there, because he kept pointing at different, say, breeds of dogs. And I'm just saying, I think the debate is solely about whether or not there's limits. Like, let me ask you, for example, since we were talking about dogs in that discussion, do you believe we could ever get a dog as small as a flea? Because we do know there are animals as small as a flea, like a flea. Or do you think we can get a dog as big as say, an elephant? Because we do know there's animals as big as an elephant, like an elephant. So do you believe there's limits, or do you believe we could see that given enough time?
Well, trying to think there now. I mean, it doesn't seem likely. I mean, but I don't know.
You mean likely that we could get a dog as small as a flea?
I mean, I don't think so, but I mean, well, I don't know what could happen over time.
Well, if you think about it, we do have animals as small as a flea, like a flea. So if, let's say, large-scale evolution is true and fleas and dogs share a common ancestor, I mean, why couldn't we, given enough time, get a dog as small as a flea or a dog as big as an elephant? Because if we can't, that means there's limits. That means there's a boundary. I mean, would you agree with that?
Well, I would wonder, could a flea leave a male dog and impregnate a female dog?
A flea impregnate a dog?
I'm sorry. I suppose that's unlikely. But it's no, unlikely. I think that insects, and when you get into, I mean, there were dinosaurs that were very small and very large, yet they were, I mean, relatively small is my understanding. And some surely look to be bigger than elephants. So, I don't know.
Yeah, actually, I think they say the average size of a dinosaur was like a chicken. So really, I mean, dinosaurs, when people think of dinosaurs, they think of these huge Tyrannosaurus Rexes, these Mosasaur, these, long necks. I mean, the majority of dinosaurs weren't even nearly that size.
No, but there are some that were still dinosaurs, and I don't know how connected all dinosaurs are. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. But
if you look at the Bible, for example, if you look at the book of Job, there's an animal called Behemoth. And he's described as the chief creature, the chief creation that God ever made. And it describes him as having a tail like a cedar tree. Now, if you've ever seen a cedar tree, what type of animal would you think that is?
Hey, Dave. Well, that could be. But there's also a thing that's kind of tough, though. It also talks about men being tall like cedar trees or something, or some type of tree. And I know that a guy I was in a discussion with recently was saying, I didn't believe the Bible because I didn't believe in giants. But, I do question that, how literal some of the Bible is meant to be taken.
Well, the biggest human being that they would talk about in the Bible would be like some of the Anakins, like Goliath, for example, and they were no more than 10, maybe 11 feet. I mean, we can see someone like Shaquille O'Neal, or some of these basketball players. I mean, they're almost 8 feet. So,
well, that's kind of my point. And were they maybe 8 or 9 feet or 8 something, and that just was insane. Especially if I'm not mistaken, I think a lot of people at that time period. And I'm not sure, actually, of that particular time period, but I do know in history there have been some people and throughout the world, around 4 foot or something like that, 4 or 5 feet. So,
yeah, exactly. So, I think the question is, because whenever people talk about creation, talk about evolution, it really just comes down to limits. And the way I see it, species are not static. And neither are the genomes. And obviously we see change over time, but the thing is there a limit to that change? Now, when I was talking to Sock Account, I asked him, do you believe a population of dogs today came from a population of non-dogs, say, long ago and far away? He said yes, but he had no mechanism to show me how that could be possible. So that's why I say evolution's a religion. And I admit I have a religion. I only have the problem when they say that they're belief is more science-based, because I don't see
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, how are you?
Good, good. How you doing, Bruce?
Good.
Dave?
This is Dave. How's it going?
Dave the man? I just see Dave the M.
You can just call me Dave the Prick.
Yeah.
Hello, dude. How you doing,
I
Dave?
mention something though that I think to say that evolution is a religion. I mean, I imagine to some people, different things might be a religion to them, but I just
evolution's a religion as much as not collecting stamps is a hobby.
Well,
okay. Well, Dave,
I just wanted to comment on this, though.
Sure. Okay.
In a reply to what he was saying about it, and I wanted to just say that there are Christians who would believe in evolution. So
yeah, the Pope believes in evolution, so that's a pretty big.
Well, my point is there's
Christian, but
sure. Would you let me just finish this point, okay?
Take your time,
Dave. I just want to get this out that there are evangelical Christians, probably not what you would recognize as fundamentalists today, but there are evangelical Christians that believe in a form of evolution. That's not. I don't think that disqualifies them as a Christian, nor would it mean that they're following a different religion.
No, I mean, you gotta remember Christianity is a pretty broad group. I mean, you got the Catholics, you got Protestants, you got all these different types of Christians. So, I mean, I don't think there's really anything that would disqualify you from being a Christian other than not believing that Jesus is your Lord and Savior.
I would say the definition of a Christian is somebody who's placed their faith on the finished work of Jesus Christ. So, for example, the Bible in Romans 4:5 says, "But to him that worketh not, but believeth on him that justifieth the ungodly, his faith is counted for righteousness." So if you put your trust on Jesus and none on your works, I would say you're a Christian. Someone like a Catholic, they're actually trusting in works. They're trusting in mass. They're trusting.
Yeah, but you gotta know that there's also a verse in the Bible that says you can't get into heaven on faith alone. You have to go there on faith and your works. So some sects of Christianity say that you need more than just faith.
I don't see a verse that says that.
No, you won't.
I couldn't quote it to you because I'm not a Christian, but I know it's there. I can look it up for you.
Well, there's a verse in
James. No. Just let Dave look it up. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Look it up.
Just let him look it up.
I would say when someone uses the word evolution, it's kind of a broad term, and I always, before any discussion, I always say, "What do you mean by evolution?" And I break it down into 6 stages. Okay, I mean, in order to have the biological evolution, Suave, you need to have the matter. So I break it down as cosmic evolution, right? The origin of time, space, matter. Nobody sees that. Nobody knows how that happened. First law of thermodynamics, second law of thermodynamics completely debunks the idea that time, space, and matter can come from nothing. Chemical evolution, stellar, planetary evolution, organic evolution, and macroevolution. Those first 5 stages of evolution, I say, are purely religious and faith-based. The last stage, change and variation, I agree, that happens. We see lots of change. Big dogs, little dogs, they're still dogs.
Without work.
Well, here's the deal on evolution, because I've taken a few biology classes. Now, in 2010, there was a study that they did, some experiments, and they were able to, without any biological material, form RNA, which is a form of genetic material, which is a base for DNA, a ribonucleic acid. They were able to form that with non-biological components exposed just to water, and through a process of evaporation and condensation, RNA formed naturally.
Is that the Milli-Urey experiment that you're referring to?
I can't remember the name of the experiment. I read it in Wired magazine, it's a science magazine, back in 2010.
I would look into that and research that a little bit more, because all they created was some left-handed amino acids, and that type of amino acids could never bring forth life. And that's really all they got. That's all that they ever have. So technically abiogenesis is still, and even the most staunch evolutionists will admit, that's still a study in the making. I mean, nobody has proven life from non-life. No one's proven non-living chemicals turning into life. I mean, that's just a fact.
Well, no, they haven't formed life, but you gotta take into account, what RNA is. RNA is a building block. And the process of evolution, it's a slow process, but it is a process which shows that these building blocks build upon each other and form new things by adding on. You know, it starts off with an amino chain that grows into a form of DNA, which compared to life as we know it now would be nothing. But over time, these amino acids form together to form DNA, which is a self-replicating through a process within the genome. So if you take into account that, you know, there are viruses and bacteria that use RNA only as a way to multiply, and the fact that over time these changes would happen, you'd have RNA forming into DNA, forming into single-celled organisms, forming into multi-celled organisms. And over the course of a few billion years, you've got the possibility of life forming.
Now, is this something you believe, or is this something you can show me? Because we know science means to know. How do we know? Observations, testing,
science doesn't really
something
mean
you can demonstrate?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we see it all the time.
We don't see it. You just said billions of years of change. We can't see that billions of years of change. This is the debate. Are there limits?
We can see that we have similar skeletons in horses. We can see that the banana shares 50% of its DNA with humans.
Do you believe that you share a common ancestor with a banana plant? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I believe that the only way for us to share DNA with something is for us to have a common ancestor.
Okay, think about this. Okay, think about this.
Shares a common ancestor at some point.
Okay, think about this. The lug nuts from a Pontiac will probably fit onto a Chevy Cruze. That proves they evolved from a skateboard billions of years ago. That's the type of logic you're using. Similarity, common design, common ancestry.
What I'm saying is that over a long period of time.
And there's your God, time. Okay, continue.
No, long periods of time. I don't believe in gods. And time is an observable thing. Time is observable. Okay. To say that time isn't observable, that
you can observe.
I don't know a better word than foolish. I mean.
Okay, let me ask you, because this is the debate. Are there limits? Now answer this question. We get a dog as small as a flea because we know there are animals as small as a flea. Can we get that? Do you believe?
I think it would be very, very, very difficult because after a point of it getting to be so small, how would we be able to corral them to make sure that they're going to keep breeding with the smallest one?
Well, you say fleas and dogs share a common ancestor, so at some point there must have been some big change.
I'm not saying it wouldn't be possible. I'm saying it'd be very difficult.
Believe. It's something you believe. Maybe it's possible given enough time. Is that what you're saying?
I think given enough time, just about anything would be possible.
But the thing is, look at your mechanisms. Natural selection is a selection process. It's selecting slices of existing DNA code. Existing. Think about that. Mutations act on existing information.
Mm-hmm.
There's the new information. How do you add information to the genome? Because these two mechanisms are acting upon existing information. Tell me that, Dick.
Right. Well, that's the thing. If you take a chain of DNA, right?
Yeah.
And now you have something that happens, a slight mutation that changes the order of that DNA. Now you've got a completely new chain of DNA.
Yeah, but that's changing DNA. That's not adding DNA. That's not adding new information.
Again, as far as that goes, you've got a chain. You can always add another link onto a chain. That's how come you got animals with different levels, different numbers of genomes in them.
But the thing is, those genomes are limited to that specific organism. Look at a dog gene pool, okay? Here's the best way I can explain it, okay? I'll be quick. Look at the English language, okay? The English language is made up of 26 letters. Now take an English book. How many typographical errors, how many misspellings, because that's generally what a mutation is, will it take to turn even one sentence of that English book into something German or Korean or Chinese? How many typographical errors will that take?
Well, you're comparing apples to oranges here.
Not at all.
Wait a minute.
Because we already know that
both of you guys. Wait a minute.
English is a Germanic language, so German's already been changed into English.
Oh, hello. Hey,
we've already seen that change happen.
Stop a second. You were both ignoring the Mandela effect. If you're going to talk books, if you're going to talk books.
Mandela effect. Now that's something interesting to talk about.
Go ahead.
I do enjoy the Mandela effect because there's a logical explanation for it that doesn't require anybody trained from different dimensions or anything. The human memory is it's a flawed device.
Well, hey, Dave, I don't want to go on a rabbit trail. Just, will you admit that you believe there are limits? Because I asked you if you think we can get a dog as small as a flea, because we have animals as small as a flea, like a flea. So is that possible?
Absolutely.
So you think we can get a dog as small as a flea?
I think that give it enough controls and
enough
somebody who has that crazy idea, over a long enough period of time, but it would take a long
There's your God. We see dogs producing dogs. We see pine trees producing pine trees. Now, you can believe that they share a common ancestor all you want, but the moment you say that, you're going into your religion, because we don't see that today. We see mutations degrading information. We see natural selection selecting existing information. There's no new information. Dogs remain dogs. Cats remain cats.
Well, that's because you're only looking at it through the scope of your timeline.
A dog.
In the course of a human's life, we're not going to see dramatic changes.
Okay, a dog.
Look at 6,000 years of life.
Happened over the course of millions, if not billions of years.
Heck, wait a minute. Let me try this.
A dog. Okay, let's let Suave talk.
What the heck? That should be working better now. Hello.
Hey, Suave, you can go ahead now.
Okay. A dog could turn into an armadillo, right?
Definitely not.
Not directly. I mean, you're not going to see a dog give birth to an armadillo. That would never happen.
Weeks, but from an armadillo, it might not take long to turn extraskeletal. Maybe grow a couple legs. Yeah, I don't know. No, I know.
That kind of change that you're talking about is a very drastic change.
Hey, Dave, is a Honda Civic related to a Chevy Cruze because they share, say, 80% of the same makeup? Would you say that they're related? Or is
actually,
well, they're not biological creatures, so I don't understand.
You know if you want to go to cars, though, I mean, I will say.
Let's talk about cars. I like cars.
Yeah, I think they are related. Yes.
You think that a Chevy Cruze is related to a Toyota Camry?
Yeah, I do.
Well, Chevy makes the Cruze, and Toyota makes the Camry. It's designed.
But I also think that a Lamborghini is related to a GTO, and I think a Hummer is related to a I don't know, an old Volkswagen hatchback. What happened?
The idea that you're saying is that because things that we make have a creator, that means that we have to have a creator.
Well,
that's what it sounds like you're trying to say.
But I mean, what I'm saying is from the beginning of automobile design of I think it's all related in that sense.
Yeah, if you go back to the beginning, I mean, there was somebody at one time created the first car. That goes without saying. Before that, they didn't have cars. You know,
that
guy took his idea from a creation of the steam engine, something like that. You know, it's different ideas built upon different ideas.
Okay, but Dave,
they might have been making tractors first. I don't even know. You know, probably.
Okay, Dave. I just want to ask you, because you keep saying that with enough time and enough change, because we know evolution means change in allele frequency and population over time. Are the changes limited? You say mutations are part of the engine of evolution. Look at point mutation, inversion mutation. What else is there? Insertion, gene duplications, frame shift, deletions. These are all degrading information. So how do you get rich? By losing money. How do you go from a single-celled organism to a fish to a reptile?
Well, think about this. The United States is the richest country in the world, and it's got the most debt. So what's that say?
Well, sure. I mean, they're printing their own money, but are you telling me that a single-celled organism over enough here? Actually, I want to ask you this. Here's a good analogy, okay? Because it's right in the textbook that I have from school. It shows a picture of a human and a frog sharing a common ancestor. Now, if I told you, okay, now listen closely. If I told you a frog could turn to a prince quickly from a kiss from a princess, you'd say that's a fairy tale. That's crazy. But if I told you that a frog could turn into a prince over enough time, over enough change, you call that science? I say both are fairy tales, both are religions. You can believe it all you want, Dave, but it's not science. And you're showing this.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let you believe whatever you want as well. But the thing is that evolution has got enough backing it up that it actually gets the credibility of being called a theory.
What's the best evidence?
Look up a scientific theory, that means that
molecular to man evolution. Go. Best evidence.
I'm sorry?
What's the best
Well, we
evidence?
have the fossil record. We have the Human Genome Project.
The Human Genome Project is proving that our genome has very limited junk DNA. We're actually looking at a fully functional DNA code. That's consistent with creation.
We have a shitload of useless DNA in us.
No. The Genome Project is actually proving that to be false. That's more.
It's showing up that we have. I mean, we have a lot of vestigial organs that we don't use. There's a lot of shit in people that is not used at all.
Okay, well, the Human Genome Project is proving that to be false. But think about a car when it first comes off the assembly line, like my car when it first came off, a Honda Civic. Everything worked great. The air conditioner worked. It was driving perfectly. Over time, what happens? Degradation. The air conditioner breaks. That's not proof of evolution. That's actually proof.
That's proof that things wear out.
Wait.
During a car,
come on a minute.
Okay, let's Suave say something. Go ahead, Suave.
No, I'm not loud. Go ahead.
Suave, your turn.
No.
We don't compare apples to oranges.
Not loud.
I think I'm proving pretty sufficiently that evolution's if I told you Mary Poppins could fly rapidly through the air, you'd say that's a fairy tale. But if I said she flew through the air slowly, oh, that's science right there, eh, Dave?
I don't think you know quite what science is.
Oh, science means to know. How do you know? You demonstrate, you observe, you test, you retest. Okay, Mary Poppins ain't gonna fly in the air rapidly or slowly. Dogs ain't gonna evolve.
It depends on what direction you're talking about. Because Mary Poppins could fly down quite rapidly. You know, if she jumps off a building, she's gonna fly downward at 9.8 meters per second.
Where's the new information, Dave? You haven't given me an answer. We see genetic entropy and information degradation. Where's the new information for molecules to man evolution? I don't see it.
Well, maybe you're not looking hard enough.
Well, how come you're not telling me?
I'm not a biologist, sir.
Well, I mean, it's a simple thing. We all know mechanisms or mutations in natural selection. Natural selection selects.
Well, natural selection is a mechanism of evolution. It's not. Evolution isn't a mechanism of natural selection.
Natural selection selects. If I put all the dogs in the world into Alaska, okay, over time, obviously, all the ones with thin fur, they're going to die out. But the ones, you're just going to have a population of huskies. But take those population of huskies and put them in the desert of Australia. Over time, they're going to become dingoes. They're going to have short hair, little skinny legs to go through the desert and adapt to the heat. That's natural selection acting on.
Well, provided that there's genes in the gene pool that could point them to having the shorter, thinner hair. If those genes aren't there, they're all going to die out because you've taken a dog that's in a cold environment and put it into a hot environment, and you're expecting it to adapt instantaneously. That just doesn't happen. Every kind of adaptation takes over time. You can see this because if you introduce a foreign species into a new environment, it either dies out quickly or else it destroys the species that are there existing. You see that like in Florida, they have the Burmese pythons that were released out there. Now there's a bunch of Burmese pythons out there, and the life that was there before is being eradicated because these pythons adapted more to live in that environment than the species that are there.
Did the python become anything other than a python, or is it acting on its?
It didn't have to. That python was bred to hunt and kill. It didn't have to. It
won't.
It was bred to hunt and kill bigger species than what exists in that environment.
Listen, I'm not arguing with you. Mutations, natural selection, they can create new varieties of old genes. Breaking things, though, it does not lead to higher function. And think about this. Breaking things, like you're talking about, it presupposes a pre-existing function that can.
I'm not talking about breaking things. I'm just pointing out that, if you take something from one environment and put it into a new environment where there's already species there, that new species is either going to kill off the species that are there, or else it's going to join in with the species that are there, or it's going to be killed off by the species that are there. It's only those three things that are going to happen.
Dave, here disagrees with natural selection. We're not talking about that. We're talking about how molecules to man evolution, what you claim to believe in, what you claim to be science,
I can't hear you, bro. You're muffled out.
Well, I want to know how you can explain how the 4-dimensional genome, overlapping codes with chock full of information.
I'm having a hard time. I heard you say something about a 4th-dimensional genome.
Here, just for a second, Dave. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
You're in and out, so I'll do my best.
Have I been in and out the whole time, or is it just now? Because it could be.
I'm sorry. I think I had my mic on, and I was playing my guitar. Sorry about that. That might have been me.
What about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, maybe this will help, because you said you took some biology courses. What's the best example you have of mutations adding new information, actually creating a beneficial mutation? Because if you believe in this large-scale evolution, you must be able to show me even one, or no?
What could I show you personally?
Oh no, yeah, you don't have to show me. You could just explain from the scientific literature. I mean, is it, is it Lenski's E. coli experiment? Is it nylon digestion? I mean, what's your best mutation example?
My best example of mutation. I mean, it'd be hard to say because it's not within our power to know what exactly is a mutation. What is it that is just two different people? Because we've got a lot of variety in DNA.
I agree.
And we've got a lot of variety, and we've got a lot of commonality as well.
Well, so, think about this, Dave.
Who knows? Maybe it's when that first single-celled organism became a multicellular organism.
Is that something you believe or something you can demonstrate?
Something that I can demonstrate?
Is that something you believe, that the single-celled organism became a multi-celled organism, or is that something you believe happened?
It's the best explanation that we have with the information that we have.
Yeah, but if we see genetic entropy and information degradation, like I said, you're not going to see that type of fisherman evolution. It's not consistent with the second law. It's not consistent with the law of increasing entropy. I mean, degrading information.
It's just fine, really. I mean, there's nothing that contradicts. If it contradicts, it wouldn't be allowed to be called a theory at all.
Well, it's actually not even a theory because it's a hypothesis. You can't even get
it's called the theory of evolution for a reason.
What's your best evidence? You still haven't given me any evidence.
I'm not a biologist, sir. I study physics.
Well, I thought you said you took some biology classes.
I took some. I took the requirements for my degree, but I'm not going to tell you that I'm an expert on biology.
Are you a Christian or atheist?
I'm an atheist.
So how do you explain the origin of time, space, and matter?
Well, the best that we know is the Big Bang Theory, which is saying that at some point, the world, there was some kind of explosion that we don't know where it came from.
But if you actually look at the law of increasing entropy, everything's degrading. Now, if you actually take that back into time, wind that back far enough, there must have been a point of least increasing entropy. That would be the point of creation, but
well, that's the point that we've been able to track back to. But we can only go back to the point of the Big Bang. We don't know what happened before that. And the best theory right now, it comes from Stephen Hawking, that said that was the beginning of time itself.
Well, Stephen Hawking, because I read his book, he said because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will come into existence. Now that sounds like, let's say you're walking down the street one day and some guy came up and told you that, and he wasn't Stephen Hawking. I mean, you'd probably say, get away from me, you're drunk. But because Stephen Hawking said that, oh, that's just so magnificent. It doesn't even make any sense. That makes zero sense.
Well, no, I've read Stephen Hawking's book, and
he did say that. I can get you a quote.
No, I have the book actually right next to me that you're talking about. You're talking about
Grand Design.
Oh, okay, yeah. Now, I have a brief history of time.
It's funny because before I got into this apologetics, I went to chapters to buy, I guess, God-centered apologetic books. And I seen that book, The Grand Design. I thought, oh, this has to be, pro-creation. So I bought it, started reading it. Halfway through, I'm like, I think this guy's trying to disprove God. This was years ago, but that's why it's bookshelf to begin with.
The thing is, Stephen Hawking's, I admired him a lot. His theories are pretty far out there, and as simple as it is to say, because there's gravity, the universe had to come into existence. The theories that go behind that, there's a lot of really complicated math that goes into that, and everything, which, you know, it goes into a lot of detail. So,
but the thing
I'll spare you having to listen to that.
Well, because obviously you're a physics major, the first law of thermodynamics states matter can neither be created nor destroyed. So either matter always existed, or matter had to have come about by some type of outside force. I mean, why would you say that it's always existed? We know it hasn't.
I didn't say it always existed.
So it came about? Was it created?
Well, I think it's not that it's created. I mean, created implies that there's a creator. There's nothing that says that we need to have a creator for things to exist.
Well, I mean, if the first law of thermodynamics says that matter can neither be created nor destroyed, but we know the universe is here, and if you look at the second law of thermodynamics, which is pretty much the law of increasing entropy, everything's winding down, wind that backwards in time. There's going to be a point of least increasing entropy. That would indicate a point of creation. Either that was fourth or not. I mean, was it or not?
I think there's nothing that says that we need to have a creator for the universe to exist. Just because we don't know the answer to something doesn't mean that God did it. If that's your excuse, then I'm going to go ahead and quote Neil deGrasse Tyson and say that all that is that makes God an ever receding pocket of scientific ignorance, which eventually will cease to exist.
Okay, so you just admitted we can't explain cosmic evolution. Let's look at chemical evolution, the origin of higher elements from hydrogen. I'm sure being a physics major, you can agree that they're 90.
Well, yeah, we know how that happens.
How did that happen?
The stars do that.
Well,
I mean, you look up in the sky, I don't know where you're at if it's daytime there. I mean, it's daytime here, but if you look up in the sky, you can see out there, there's a big bright thing in the sky that's currently turning hydrogen into helium.
Now, how do you get the other 92 elements from that?
Well, there's another star somewhere off out there that's turning helium into whatever, and turning this amount of pressure creates it by putting so much pressure on it. That's what's going on in the sun right now, is that the hydrogen atoms are being fused together and created into helium atoms. So you take the helium, they can be pushed together with the hydrogen to create what's number 3, whatever it is. And it just goes on and on and on. Every atom in your body comes from an exploding star that exploded millions, if not billions of years ago.
Would you say, as Neil deGrasse Tyson said, that we're nothing but stardust?
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Well, let me ask you. So obviously we're looking at trillions and trillions of stars. And I mean, they say that every human being on this planet could probably own 1 trillion stars, but we never see one star form. And you're going to say, I understand the stars.
That's not true, actually. We've seen evidence of where stars are born in all different kinds of galaxies all across the universe. I mean,
you see different brightness, you see different lights. I mean, at the end of the day, you see stars explode all the time, and we know novas and supernovas exist. But you can't get dust to condense into a solid star. I mean, look at Boyle's gas law. I mean, how's that possible? Is this something you believe or something you can demonstrate?
Okay, you're losing me here. You're trying to say that because I can't create a star, because I don't have the ability to create a star here on Earth, because on Earth we're subject to Boyle's gas law, that stars don't form by themselves, because we've seen it.
I'm just saying we've never seen a star form. Show me where a star is
formed. Well, that's because it takes time for a star to form. The universe evolves just like we do, just like all other things. Everything evolves over time. So you're looking at, right now, you look out at the universe and you say, this stuff all must have been here all as it is, because that's what the Bible says. Well, that's foolish, because we know that it hasn't all been out here just like it is, as the Bible says, because we can go back and look at it through the time, and we can trace it back that there was some point in time where there was a big bang, that we can't see what happened before that, but we can see up to that point in time that happened. Now,
we can see the known universe. Now, the inferences we make upon those observations, because I'm telling you, and you can look at the research, we've never documented one star birth. We've documented plenty of supernovas, but we've never documented one star birth. How'd they all get there? Like I said, we can all own 1 trillion of them. That's the ones we know about. Dave, we don't know about the ones we don't know about. So how'd they all get there, my friend?
You're asking me to explain to you how the universe got to be to the point it is.
No, I'm
you
just
want me
asking.
to be able to explain to you with the limits of my education, because you understand I'm a guy that's on YouTube. If I was more educated than what I am, I'd probably be a lot richer than what I am. So, so what you want me to do is tell you that the universe got to this way and explain to you how each star got to where it's at. The fact of the matter is that just because I don't know that doesn't mean that God did it. There's a lot of things that I can just say I don't know, and that's a perfectly fine answer to me. Eventually, I may learn. I've still got studying to do. But at this point in my life, I don't know. Perhaps I'll learn later.
And understandable, Dave. I'm just trying to prove to the listening audience that you indeed do have a religion, because cosmic evolution, chemical evolution, stellar and planetary evolution, organic evolution, and macroevolution, adding new information to the genome, these are all purely religious. And you've admitted that a few times here. Go back and listen to the tape. I mean, I'm just trying to say, hey, you have a religion. You have the right to your religion. You believe these things. Like I said, you believe Mary Poppins. She flies rapidly through the air. I mean, you know, that's not science.
I didn't say anything about Mary Poppins, but I mean, going on this idea that, you know, that God did it, like I said, that's a easy way to cop out of saying I don't want to look for the information. Just because somebody doesn't know doesn't mean that God did it. I mean, that was an answer that worked fine a few hundred years ago, you know, but today with everything, because we're able to look at things, we're able to see that, hey, you know, this theory works. That's in the scientific community. In the scientific community, we don't look at a theory and say, okay, that's a great idea. We'll call that the theory of this. You know, we don't do that. We say, well, this is a great hypothesis. Does it work? And if it works, we'll call it a theory until something better comes along. At which point something better comes along, we'll either say, okay, does this disprove that theory? If it disproves that theory is gone, and we go with the better explanation. That's why science works so well. And science works very well for everybody. It's not something that, you know, you have to go get your PhD before you can try these things. You know, you can do this at home. You know, we've shown, hey, we can separate water into hydrogen and oxygen.
And that all falls into science. I'm not against operational science. I mean, look at molecules to man evolution, Dave, because I agree with science. Operational science, it's very, very important. Now, molecules to man evolution, on the other hand, that's based on the premise that through mutations and natural selection, organisms have, and you've said this before, over the past 3 billion years or so, become more complex. These organisms have then progressed into creatures
and that's the best explanation that we have at this point in time.
So where's your evidence for it, though? Because,
well, like I said, we have the fossil records. We have the Human Genome Project, which has shown that we have to share some ancestors with these different beings because we share DNA with them. You can't share DNA with somebody if you don't share some kind of an ancestor with them.
Okay, so let's see. So fossils, okay. What do fossils prove? Fossils can't count as evidence for anything, Dave. Fossils prove that something died. Now we're going to put our interpretation on those bones. Fossils are bones found in the dirt. Why would we think bones in the dirt, Dave, can do something that animals today can't do? We know on a genomic level, new information is never added to the genome. So why would we expect something dead, some bone in the ground, to do what can't be done today? In an honest court of law, that judge would laugh you out of the courtroom, okay? And you can't prove that those bones had any kids, let alone different kids. Animals today, they bring forth after their kind, okay? Based on their limited genetic information. Some bone found in
now you're talking about, because we have the fossils that show a distinct lineage that leads straight up to human beings. We show it goes straight all along from some ancient ape-like animal all the way up to modern day human beings. We have fossils that go along there. Now, you want to say, well, this one didn't give birth to that one. Probably not, because it wouldn't happen like that. It'd be slow changes over a long period of time. You can look at human beings 1,000 years ago, and you can see that there are distinct differences from human beings 1,000 years ago to human beings today. We're taller. We tend to have longer necks. So
that's environmental pressure related, especially in a biblical creation model. We would expect that post-flood. Neanderthals,
Well, there's no evidence of this flood that you talk about either.
Human evolution. That proves things were different, especially post-flood. I mean, you're going to have an ice age. You're going to have.
There's no evidence of a flood.
Okay, how do you explain billions and billions of dead things? Fossils require rapid burial. How do you explain all the sedimentary layers? How do you explain clams on Mount Everest?
Human beings bury